Hi, Nick.
Hi, Janice. How are you?
Fine. How are you?
This meeting goes.
Yeah.
Oh, good, 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 good. So they
Yeah,
know.
I
So
just
anyway, yeah.
remember to
So
hit the.
so Chris Haley, Director of Research, Education, and Outreach, and the Legacy of Slavery Program at the Maryland State Archives. Thanks for being here.
Great. Thank you. And Commissioner Millen.
Hi, good afternoon. Along with serving on the commission, I am the chair of the logistics committee for the commission. And then the newly named president of the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project. As Will Schwartz, for those who don't know, has retired from that position.
Oh, great. Thank you. Let's see. Janice, how would you like to go next?
Hi, Eric. Good to meet you. My daughter and I run a consulting practice that has been tasked with writing the final report for the incredible work that this commission has done over the last 5 years. And so it's been an honor and also a joy to join these meetings to hear what people are saying and to help us shape a really fine final report.
Great. Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Chavis. Yeah, we are just kind of going around and introducing ourselves to Eric Wiebelhaus-Brown, who's joining us from University of Arkansas Little Rock.
Nice to meet you, Eric. Charles Chavis. I'm the vice chair of the commission, and I'm also a professor at George Mason University. Nice to meet you, sir.
Great, thank you. Um, Councilor Franklin.
Good afternoon. I'm Stephanie Franklin. I'm an attorney and a reparatory justice advocate for those who are descendants of U.S. chattel slavery.
Great, thank you. Hannah, how'd you like to go next?
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Hannah Lane, and I am a staff member at the Maryland State Archives. I work with Chris Haley, who is a commissioner on the MLTRC. He just waved, and y'all just heard from him. And I also work with Emily Squires, another State Archives staff member who is here. I'm part of the research department at the State Archives in the Legacy of Slavery program, and I just offer support to the commission however I can.
Oh, that's an understatement. We're gonna give you some serious props in a moment. But thank you. Kayla, how'd you like to go next?
Hello, my name is Kayla. I'm a 2L at Howard University School of Law, and I'm interning with the commission this summer, or excuse me, this spring.
Great, thank you. And yes, mad props going out to you as well. Okay. Caitlin, how'd you like to go next?
Hi, I'm Catlin. I am with Living and Growing, who has been providing mental health and just psychological support to the hearings and are hoping to support also with recommendations for the final report.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and I think you and your colleagues are probably the only folks who have been to every single hearing in person. So there is, yeah, you've got some wonderful insight, I'm sure, that I'm hoping you will share with us. Emily, how'd you like to go next?
Sure. Good afternoon. I'm Emily Olin Squires, Assistant State Archivist of Maryland, and thank you so much for being here. I'm just here to support the commission, both in its work and making sure that all the work of the commission is documented in perpetuity.
Right. Well, it's a tremendously important job, and I can't thank you enough for all the work you're doing on that front. And so, Commissioner Coles, you're up.
Thank you. Thank you guys for the indulgence. I just needed a second to deal with my dog. Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Coles. I am a commissioner. I'm one of the public members on the commission and really excited about the work we're doing and the progress that we've made in the last couple of weeks. We're on fire right now.
Oh, yes. So this is probably as good a time as any to turn things over to you, since the first piece on the agenda is the upcoming hearing that you have been doing an awful lot of work on. And again, I just want to, get a major shout out to Hannah and to Kayla for actually getting the letters out to the people that we have been inviting to provide testimony at the hearing. So thank you both for all of that work. You know, and again, in some cases, you know, because we caught some mistakes in the letters and you had to redo that work. So apologies for that. And thank you again for the work that you're doing. So, oh, and Trish is here. Trish, we're just introducing folks to Dr. Wiebelhaus-Brahm, who's joining us from the University of Arkansas Little Rock. If you could just briefly introduce yourself.
Yes, I would love to do so. My name is Trish Floyd. I'm the project manager. I work with the Office of Attorney General, and I work very closely with the commissioners. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Trish.
Great. Thank you. So, Commissioner Coles, please
Great.
tell us about all the good and wonderful work that you and other folks have been
Yeah.
doing.
The team, the dream team. Okay, so I'll start with a quick recap. We are planning a 2-day hearing on April 4th and 5th, focused on the topic of reconciliation and what that should look like. Day one of the hearing is going to be hearing from or focusing on law enforcement. Really, we call it the institutions. And so looking at the institutions of law enforcement as well as news and media that both have played a role in the existence of lynching and allowing it to continue for so long. And so we have the law enforcement segment split into two pieces. One, we hope to hear from current members of the Maryland I have to look up the exact name, but it's like the Police Commission on Training Standards and Accountability. I'm saying the name wrong. I should have pulled it up, but that's basically the people at the state level that help set the training for police officers and the implementation of those trainings and practices. And so we'd like to hear from them on the topic of how they have adjusted their trainings to try to reduce, minimize, eliminate the unnecessary killings of African Americans, unarmed African Americans, and tying that into the legacy and the role that police had in the past with lynchings. The second half of the policing hearing panel, a separate panel, is going to be focusing on people that have been leaders in police reform. And so wanting to hear from them about some of the best practices and things that every police department should be doing to, again, ensure the reduced occurrence of unnecessary uses of force against Black people. And then a third panel on day one is going to be focused on the role of the media. And so we've invited a number of people to speak on that topic as well, which with a mix of representation between people that are in the news media industry themselves, as well as outsiders who we think can offer a nice critical lens and things that the media should be thinking about doing differently and better. So that's day one. On day two, we are focusing more broadly on reparations. And so we're doing that again with 3 panels, with the first panel being hearing from legal experts in the field and just thinking ahead at what are the constitutional issues, statutory issues, challenges that we may face, and thinking about that on the front end to make sure that we're structuring in our recommendations in a way that can survive legal scrutiny. We're also going to hear from, as a second panel, people who are just experts on the topic of reparations in general, what that looks like, what good programs encompass, things like that. And then the third panel is called Community Perspectives. And that's, again, on the topic of reparations, but just to hear from more wider voices that may not be scholars in the field, but still have personal experience and just valuable information to share with us. So we sent out, I think, around 37 invitations for these 6 panels, as well as a couple of special guest speakers that we're hoping will join us. We're starting to get some of those yes responses in. Not too many no's yet, but there's still a lot of responses that are outstanding. And so our deadline to ask people to respond was February. Let me see, what date did we give people? It's in a couple of weeks.
The 21st,
What's that?
I believe.
26, is that what it is?
The 21st.
21st. Okay. So we gave people a deadline of February 21st. And so we'll meet again after that when we have a clearer sense of who's able to participate and just think through the schedule, think through the questions. We've already started thinking about how to frame the hearing in terms of the questions that we want to ask. And so I'm going to turn to Kayla in a second if she wants to just kind of do a quick high-level summary of some of the questions that she's starting to think through that we want to pose for each panel. And the structure of the hearing that we anticipate having is a handful of commissioners, somewhere between 3 and 5 commissioners will likely be on the same platform, like on the same stage as around 5 witnesses for each panel. And the witnesses will be able to provide their remarks that we estimate will be up to about 10 minutes per witness. And then it'll be followed with a Q&A period between the commissioners and the witnesses. And that's what it's looking like. So we're excited. I think we're going to get a lot of great information. I think there's a number of benefits to having this hearing. I think my hope is that it will help our report writers with the reconciliation part of the report they're doing. We've invited all the witnesses to submit not only oral testimony in person, but also written testimony. So our hope is it will give our report writers something really good to work with and pull from, and that we'll be able to support the recommendations that we're making with proven strategies and and hearing from experts in this space that have a lot of credibility. Depending on who's able to come to this hearing and how many witnesses that we have, I think that it's a good chance we can drive a lot of public attention to the work that we're doing with this hearing, which will be helpful for us as we're trying to get our recommendations passed into law. And so I think there's a lot of potential with this hearing. And so really grateful to everyone on this call for your contributions. Everyone contributed the names of people that they thought that we should invite, and people helped with reviewing the letters and, putting the pieces together. And so this was a group team effort. And so I'm very excited to see the outcome in a couple of months. I'm going to turn to Kayla really quickly just to kind of talk to us about some of the questions, and then I think that's most of my piece, and I'll hand it back to you, Nick.
Okay, great. Thank
Hi,
you.
everyone. I dropped the link to the questions, and Michelle really touched on most of it, but they're just questions that we're starting off preliminarily with. Given that we don't really know who is coming yet, I guess as people respond yes or no, we'll tailor the questions more narrowly. But at the moment, we're really just trying to think through what everyone's role was in perpetuating racial violence historically and present day, and particularly for the reparations panel and then the legal expert panel. Trying to think through models of reparatory justice that we've seen before that have been successful. And like Michelle said, some of the state level and federal level challenges that might show up as we try to, craft ideas around reparatory justice and reparations. So again, it should be open for everyone to comment on and leave suggestions. And we'll really appreciate if you all do that just so that we can narrow the questions down. Thanks so much.
Okay, great. Thank you. Are there questions, comments, criticisms, suggestions?
I was just now thinking, seeing that we are going to be holding it at the Lewis Museum, if it will be helpful if I, after everything is solidified with the contract, of course, be able to do a walkthrough of spaces to see how we're wanting to set up various panels, or closer to the date, Michelle, if there's some way that you're envisioning all of this going so that we can really have a flow on the 4th and the 5th. I think it'll probably be helpful to kind of go there maybe 2 days before the hearing or some days before the hearing and kind of get those spaces set up for when folks get there, they know where they need to be placed and kind of the transition of show.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. We can, work with the Lewis Museum to schedule that, but I think that's a great idea. One thing I did forget to mention is, as everyone was making recommendations on names for who we should invite as witnesses, to the extent you have personal relationships with any of the people that you recommended or that are on the list in general, if folks could reach into their Rolodexes and reach out and, make sure they receive the invitation and encourage them to attend, that would be really helpful.
Okay. Thank you. Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, and certainly with our earlier meeting, this almost came up, but didn't exactly come up. So with the speakers that we're asking to participate, especially some of the ones who have more of a high profile, do we have a sense of what we are able to offer them as stipends or what have you? Because sometimes that may be the thing that gets them to be with us or not be with us. I just don't recall us having that
So
opening.
I'm not sure if you were, Chris, I sent an email to the AG's office, and what they replied, I asked them about whether there was any funds for travel.
$2,000.
It was either, I think it was three. I think it was
Was it three? Okay.
3,000,
Okay.
but it was total, right?
Oh,
I mean, right.
okay.
So,
Sure.
the way I'm dealing with it right now is I'm waiting for someone to ask me the question, and so far no one's asked.
Okay.
And I think a lot of people just kind of assume that because we're the government that we're not paying, which would be a good assumption. And so, but yeah, no one's asked yet. It's not enough money to offer in
Yeah.
advance with as many witnesses as we've invited. So I think we'll have to cross that bridge. And then the other thing that the AG's office said is that with all these things going on with the federal government right now,
Right.
there's been a freeze in our OJP money. And so that's not helping either. So we're not in a great place on that.
Okay. Yeah. I had looked online to see what some of the prospective fees were, and they were quite
Yeah.
well, what they weren't, right? What they weren't, which is
Yeah.
that's about what we have.
I mean, like I can only speak to, well, actually probably both, but so I have the same speakers bureau as a couple of the
Mhm.
witnesses that we invited. And so when we invited Clint Smith, I followed up with the contact for him because it's my same speakers, it's my same agent. And I mentioned, I was like, hey, I'm sorry, but we're not going to be able to pay. And he said, I figured as much. So I think the kind of the assumption out there, he was like, and he also said that's not going to dictate Clint's schedule. It's just going to be more about his availability. But I
Okay,
think
that's
people
good.
are just kind of like assuming we're not paying.
Okay, because he's the only one I really knew. So
Okay, but still reach out. I don't know him personally, so if you
okay.
could still,
Well, we were just on the same. I did a panel. He was a speaker. I was his Q&A person. So it was just he and I, he and me.
yeah,
Yeah, right. So that was
yeah. No,
good
I
to
don't. I
have him.
haven't met him before.
I might have a contact to Gloria Ladson Billings unless somebody else has made that connection.
Great. I heard her name. Was that her? Oh no, that Kayla. You're the one who brought her to my attention, right? Okay. Okay, so I don't know if anyone has a connection to her. That would be great.
Yeah, Eric.
Is it the case that the hearings will be recorded in the same way that other public hearings for the commission have been over time? So then they'll be available on the same platform and that others have. Okay.
Yeah, that's the game plan.
Have there been any thoughts about, I don't know, I don't mean this sort of in a flippant way, but like to produce sort of like a highlight reel in a sense, because it's a lot of content for for someone to digest.
You mean
Yeah,
after the fact?
I mean, it couldn't hurt. I mean, I think that would be wonderful. I know, I guess it was a couple of years ago, Will Schwartz did a sort of a brief one for the hearings that we had to that point. So I don't know if we can approach him about maybe doing something like that, or if we, need to figure out how to do that in-house. But I think that would be a great idea. And again, as we think about how do we make the report more broadly accessible to folks, who aren't necessarily going to pick up a multi-volume report or, try to download it from the web. Yeah, I think that would be another good thing to consider as an option there. Yeah.
Yeah, because one of the things that I see with a lot of commissions around the world is that, as technology has made it easier to make their materials accessible to the world, it's like the data that they're producing is getting more and more massive, which then becomes much more intimidating for your average person to dive into. So it's like an embarrassment of riches in some ways. right? That then creates barriers for people to engage with.
No, I think that's a great idea. Yeah, so we can talk about that too if people want to
Yeah,
sort of explore that as an option. Yeah, go ahead, Charles.
I had a question about I guess the tally, Michelle, for those who confirmed. Do we have like a tally that can be shared? I know I'm getting emails, but I wonder if with a lot of yeses, I just wanted to make sure we can keep track of like where we're at and if there's anything we can do to like push certain people you want us to keep pushing and see if we can reach out to that we haven't heard anything from yet. Oh, there it is.
See if you can click on it. I'm not sure, but
Okay.
that's
Yep, I got it. Yep.
okay. And Charles, I think I shared the folder that all the invitations are in. I think I shared that with you. That's
Okay.
where it's located.
Okay, and yellow means
Hold on, let me see what yellow means. I'll undo yellow.
this one.
They were people who got their invitations after everyone else.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. But the colored ones are the ones that are confirmed.
No, sorry.
Oh,
So I believe the teal ones or the turquoise ones, those are people we don't have contact information for. So those are the invitations that have not gone out.
Perfect.
I
Okay.
think is what was going on there. Yeah, but the ones that are confirmed are in column E where it says response yes or no. And anything with a Y or an N has gotten back to us, and everyone else we haven't heard from.
Oh, this is great. Thank you again for doing all of this and putting this all together and making it so wonderfully digestible.
You're welcome.
Yeah, this is fantastic.
Kayla put this spreadsheet together, so very grateful to have her on the team.
Yes, very much so.
Charles, we didn't get an invitation to Louis Deckmore because we were never able to find a email address from him.
Okay, so I'll work on that. And in terms of your reparations experts, have we had any responses?
From
Yeah.
the reparations experts, so far, Joel Goza is the only one of those to have accepted.
Okay, we didn't get one to I'll try to remember everybody's name, but you always forget someone. Um, they're actually on this panel that Eric shared with us.
Okay.
And they wrote the Tulsa. They work for Human Rights Report. Their name is escaping me. Dreesen. He. I have contact information for Dreesen, but I forgot it completely about Dreesen. I
Hold on.
apologize.
This says Dreesen. Oh, Dreesen Heath. Okay. Yeah. Okay, we could prepare an invitation to him. We haven't invited him, but we could send an invitation.
Yeah, she is amazing.
Oh, she? Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry.
the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project Conference a couple years ago.
Okay.
He was just amazing. So yeah, if we could get her, that would be fantastic.
And she actually authored the Tulsa Human Rights Watch report.
Okay.
Which is like, yeah, I mean, yeah. So I'll get her email address that I have because we are on some calls together. So let me go ahead and hunt that down. But go ahead, but great job. And please forgive me for not remember. I've tried to remember everybody's name, but as we, get closer and closer, we can come together. And as I remember, I'll try to remind myself.
Okay. Kayla, did you get that name? Would you be able to do an invitation for them?
Sure. Can somebody put the exact name in the chat? Because I wasn't able to find the name just by hearing.
I'll write it down for you. Actually, I'll send you her link. And you said it to her. Okay.
I'm gonna get the email right now. I'm listening, I promise. I'm just gonna pull the email and put it in the chat or send it directly to you.
Okay. Yeah, Eric, if you could follow up Professor Sirleaf, I know her as well. But I think coming as many angles as we can is helpful. Okay.
Okay, are there other questions, comments about the hearing?
Um, each day of the hearing, there will be a 30-minute segment for public comment. So I forgot to mention that when I was describing the program. And we're also trying to think creatively of other ways to get input from the public on the day of the hearing. Amy, I don't know if you're still thinking through that. Do you want to talk about that at all?
I am still thinking about it. The idea is that, we've invited folks from 12 hearings or 13 hearings over however many years to testify. Some have turned us down because they may not want to or may not have been ready. Others may have more to say. And so, how can we sort of capture a more expanded testimony or additional testimony on April 4th and 5th? I mean, I was thinking even like a story court kind of thing where you can walk up and speak into a mic and record it in real time during the hearing itself, sort of out in the lobby space, or just have paper and pencil. People can write down their testimony. So that's just something we're thinking about. I also need to think reality. How much more data can we all process and handle? But also wanting to make sure people do have that space to share if they so choose, to understand that it continues. So I don't really have an answer beyond that, except maybe a rationale for my thinking.
Along those lines, kind of, Amy, just mentioning the 12 hearings that we've held, do we have a way, and maybe it's just through the commissioners that were liaisons, but I think it would be great if everyone reached out to the people that helped them plan the individual county hearings, just to let them know that this is happening, just kind of as an update. I already shared it with the Southern counties, so it would be on their radar.
Yeah, actually, that's good. I can do that in my capacity as the logistics chair, is just to write to each of those leads. So good, thank you.
Okay.
Chris, your hand is up.
I was just writing a note about reaching out to the Anne Arundel County Coalition. And I know we've probably talked about this separately in the institutional hearing meetings, but I know Hannah was working really hard getting out invitations the other day, and I know, and having gone through this process before, sometimes you being the agency or the event that wants this to happen and wants these people to be there, there's delay. And what helps you move forward is giving them a timetable by which you need to hear. And I don't recall if we've come up with that number yet or that date yet, to be, if we don't hear in a week, if we don't hear in 2 weeks, then it's like, well, okay, so then we get back in touch and say, well, we need to know by blah, 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 so that we can move forward or what have you.
I think we established the February 21st is the date by which we'd like to hear back.
Okay.
It's in the letter.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, which then would also bring up, for those, are there folks that we might want to think about, we really want to have there? And if they say no, like I know there have been a couple of, folks on the police side of things. Do we want to have the Attorney General's office issue subpoenas to compel them to show up and, if not answer questions, at least take the fifth? Because that I think is something, again, I just have a feeling, the folks at the Baltimore Sun are not going to be terribly eager to show up for this. And I think we need them there front and center in the hot seat to answer questions. Yes, they wrote a nice little letter a couple of years ago, and Charles, you responded very forcefully to it. I would really like to know, what are you going to do? How are you going to hold yourselves accountable? Because yes, they apologized, but they didn't really say an awful lot about what they're going to do to try to hold themselves accountable, and what actions they're going to take, as a result of that. So I think that's another piece that we should think about, if it comes to issuing subpoenas, who do we want to hit with subpoenas, if at all? And I think, we can work with our colleagues in the Attorney General's office to generate those. Great.
Yes, Nick, and I believe Michelle sent over a request for that last week, and it is bumped over to our lawyers. So
Okay,
as soon as you all know the names of the folks that you are wanting to have the draft templates for the subpoenas, just let us know, and we
okay,
can get the templates made.
okay, fantastic. Thank you, Trish.
Mhm.
Janice, your hand was up.
This might seem like a picayune question, but actually it's part of my pre-thinking about the report writing.
Mhm.
Will the panels be simultaneous? Or will they be sequential? So any given person can see all 6 panels?
Yeah, there's sequential. There's like a 10 a.m. Let me see, I don't have the schedule. I think each day there's a 10 a.m. panel, an 11 p.m. panel, a short lunch break, and then like a 2 p.m. panel. And
Okay,
each day goes roughly from 9 to 3.
okay. Thank you. That's very helpful.
Yes. Okay. And maybe this is a good moment to segue over to, the second agenda item, talking about the report. And so maybe turn things over to you, Janice, and to Leah.
Yes, thank you. Glad that we were on the agenda.
Surprise.
Yeah, I know. So we sent to this committee?
Mhm.
Or members, yes, this committee, kind of a draft of, well, 2 things. One was a draft of how we are putting together the case studies or proposing to put together the case study materials. And then another that's looking at the entire final report. And a piece of feedback we've already received regarding the final report is that the page number allocations we had for any given section was way too small, which is fine with us. We just wanted to kind of say, okay, where are the boundaries here? If it ends up being a 400-page report, okay, but we'll just start small. So it's important for us to get feedback, because once we sort of get the go ahead from you folks, we're going to charge in and plug stuff into the case study templates, the areas of the final report where we already have information. Obviously, the reconciliation component part won't be until after April, but even then there might be some things that we can start to think about. We've already had some discussions about what some of those component parts might be. And so I don't know the extent to which we can have a full-on conversation here about, I mean, I'll be scribbling notes as you're giving that feedback. It might be that you're going to send us written feedback by email or something, but we already started, but we want to really dive in with a sense of, I guess, organization, right? Because we know the volume of data already, and we're hearing about more potential data. So how do we channel it with some sensitivity and some direction from this group?
I apologize that I've been slow in my feedback. I've been completely consumed with this invitation process for the last couple of weeks, but I'll put this on my homework list and try to tackle it over the weekend, and hopefully early next week.
Okay,
If I have some
great.
feedback, I'll put it in there. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
No problem. No problem.
Also, I don't believe that it was shared everybody, at least on the Reconciliation Commission, because I haven't received anything.
I think in the initial instance, she sent it to the commissioners.
Right.
Yeah, it hasn't
Okay.
gone out.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, just sort of looking at the case study template, I think it looks fine. Again, sort of the only note that I had there was on the aftermath. It was just kind of a note about the coroner's inquest, because inevitably that's going to be a significant part of it. But you know, it looks fine, and basically, I'm just thinking, as long as we sort of can get that into something of a narrative form, and again, thinking like a historian, kind of saying, yeah, I mean, oftentimes, we'll have, here's the lit review, here's sort of the state of what we know. And then based on, it's like, from the hearings, we've heard this from family, we've heard this from community, and sort of ways to kind of update and say, this is, what we've learned, and this is how we can kind of revise or, sort of rethink, sort of what we know or think about, these particular cases. And yeah, some cases are going to have a lot more material than others. So yeah, but I think as a template, I think it's a good structure.
Mhm. Thank you for that feedback.
Yeah.
I sent you a PDF of something. Did you guys get it, Janice?
I don't know if we did. When did you send it, Chris?
If it wasn't yesterday, it was the day before. If it wasn't the day before, it was the day before that. If it wasn't the day
Oh.
before that, it was the day.
Okay, Leah says yes, we did get it.
Okay, great. Okay, good. Okay.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I had a question. So just to be clear, and I just want to make sure that it was understood, Nick, you were saying a lit review should be added at the beginning of the case study for
I
each
mean, we don't
case?
necessarily need a lit review per se, but just sort of thinking about, because, for example, we have all of those, brief bios on the state archives website. Um, and again, I mean, again, don't want to throw shade or anything like that, but I mean, and again, they're tremendously helpful. They give you sort of the quick and dirty, here's what happened. But they also carried, some of the perspectives there, from the contemporary papers. And I think this is an opportunity to kind of say, hey, yeah, this is what was written about them at the time. 150 years on, we can rethink some of this. And I think I think be intentional in at least sort of that historiographic perspective might be useful.
Do you think having that as a statement at the beginning of the report, or should we deal with that? And do you think that's worthy of dealing with in real time with each report? Because I feel like we can. I mean, I think it'll be up to you all, but I'm just wanting to make sure for clarification that this template doesn't require another section, or does it? Do we want to put that with each of these case studies, or do we want to say this is a section on sources and methods? We understand this is the literature. We're going beyond that, and blah 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 blah. You see what I'm saying? That can be dealt with at the beginning, I think,
Yeah.
in like the intro. Okay, so it doesn't
Yeah,
have to
and
be
I think
intro.
that would work too,
Okay, gotcha.
So yeah, I mean, basically first and foremost, as long as we address that
Yes.
particular issue, because we're gonna need to address that, otherwise, why not just go with what what's already there? Um, because again, I just think of, sort of those moments at some of the hearings where, like in Allegheny, they said, hey, we finally got some closure. We thought, our ancestor had just gone away and we never knew what happened to him. Or the folks in, the lower Eastern Shore saying, hey, we never had an opportunity to provide our family member a proper burial, or, finding out that apparently, in Howard County, it's like he wrote a poem. you know I mean, getting these sorts of, I mean, they seem like tidbits, yes, but I mean, I think these are really important details, and again, I think they go a great way to, again, reclaiming and, highlighting the humanity of these folks, who had families. They weren't just these brutes that, were reported in the newspapers. And so I think it's important to make sure that we identify those moments and those particular details and include them.
Mhm. But I want to make sure I'm clear, Charles and Nick, between what you're both saying.
Mhm.
Yes, at the very beginning of the entire report, we talk about these nuances.
Mhm.
But we also talked, I think, a bit in the research committee meeting earlier this week about the fact that on any given case study, there are going to be multiple perspectives. And so within that case study is also an opportunity, I think, to say there's controversy about this particular fact. Am I
Yeah.
accurate that that's what we're tasked to do? that we nuance the case studies, each case study, in addition to giving that kind of preamble for all of the case studies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, because I think, I guess sort of the image that comes to mind is, sort of looking at a puzzle, right? Each of these case studies is sort of like, a specific piece. And, and as we start putting them together, yeah, there's going to be a broader image that begins to take shape. And that's where, yeah, talking about sources and methods, we can address that broader picture, and again, there might be things where, yeah, we need to talk about this, in this particular case, but not necessarily in another one. So yeah, I mean, I think that would be something that I would leave to your discretion as the writers.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Other thoughts, ideas, questions? Yes, Michelle.
No, this is obvious. And Eric, I think this is in your wheelhouse of what you do research on. But it just strikes me that it's going to be so important to really go into the specifics in terms of the recommendations with the hopes of being able to keep Maryland accountable, whether it's willing to make the changes now or in the future. I think I had mentioned this before, but in Canada, after the Canadian TRC, there was a university. This was an Indigenous led research center at one of the universities that took on trying to hold Canada accountable for all the recommendations. So it just seems like, in addition to really doing justice to the bios, really going into the weeds in terms of possible recommendations will be in our best interests.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing the link there. Yeah, that should be a fun read. Okay. Yes, Eric.
I guess would now be the time to kind of follow up on Michelle's comment, or could
Yeah, by all
do
means.
that later. Yeah, I think this is just sort of more to point out the obvious, and that's the commission will not be around forever, right? And but at the same time, there's going to need to be continued pressure to make sure that the recommendations get acted upon. So then now would be a time to sort of reinforce. Right, and I think these hearings are a great opportunity to do this, to reinforce relationships with community organizations, so that they can continue to be sources of pressure, and I guess that is a reminder to be prepared that your role, if you're willing to accept it, right, doesn't end when the commission ends as well, and like kind of continue to be the watchdog. And there have been some interesting examples of like trying to have almost like a scorecard kind of approach to see whether governments are acting upon these recommendations, what progress they're making. One of the things I've been doing some work more recently with some colleagues at William and Mary, and we're looking, and including Dr. Kelly Schwabgo, who I know has done some work with the commission over the years too. And one of the things that's relatively common for commissions to do is actually to recommend that the state sort of create, for lack of a better word, sort of a follow-up body, to either monitor or implementation, or advocate on behalf of implementation, or to evaluate whether the state is implementing these recommendations. So I'm not sure where, but maybe something to give some thought about whether that would be valuable, and if you've got thoughts about where that might be, and maybe it belongs outside of the state, or maybe it belongs in the archivist's office. I'm agnostic on that, and don't know a lot about Maryland politics per se. But important things that you bring up, Michelle.
Yeah, I love having a scorecard and an external method to gauge the progress. I think in public, right? Because ultimately, I think it's the public that will be holding the legislatures and the state government responsible. So I think that should absolutely be a part of what we do. Eric, I want to ask you, did you happen to message Matiange while we were on this call? Because she just accepted.
Yes, I did.
Good job, Eric.
I didn't know I had such power.
Yes, apparently you do. Another question that I have is that makes me a little bit nervous, but I'm kind of wondering what you guys think. I understand that there's a parallel effort taking place in the Maryland legislature to address reparations, presumably for slavery, maybe even Jim Crow, head on, which relates to what we're doing, but is broader than what we're doing. And I'm a little fearful and wondering, are we going to make our recommendations and then are we going to be put on ice because now this larger reparations effort maybe is moving forward? Are we going to end up in a study of reparations for decades to come without any real action? And I was just wondering if anybody who's closer to that than I am has any insight on what's happening with that bigger reparations thing and how it impacts our work.
I'm not privy to anything there, but I think, if nothing else, we've got the head start. Because even if they pass something during this, term of the legislature, I don't know that they're going to necessarily be able to get something up and running before we get our report in. So I would say whatever they come up with, yeah, that's going to be great. But I think we've got the head start, and again, sort of having looked at how they dropped the ball here in California, we just make sure we don't make that same mistake in whatever entity, or maybe we recommend that whatever, accountability, piece, with that dashboard or scorecard is housed in the Attorney General's office. Because then, I mean, I think they would then have the power to make sure that this stuff is getting implemented and we don't have to worry about creating a whole new entity that may or may not get passed by the state legislature. Just off the top of my head.
I would be concerned about putting it in the AG's office just because that position changes and their affinity for this type of work may change as well. So I would rather it not be in a political office.
No, that's fine. And again, I think we can talk more about that. I just, again, want to make sure that we don't drop the ball the way they dropped the ball here in California. So yeah, Eric.
This is this actually resonates really nicely with a project that I did recently looking at recommendations from truth commissions in Latin America. And one of the things that we found was that often, first, I mean, the orders may be a little bit different, but often when truth commissions were created in other contexts, they were building upon recommendations that were out there existing in civil society or the nonprofit sector, for those who are less familiar with the civil society term. And, or maybe there's like things that were recommended from the United Nations or other kinds of external actors. And so I think one of the things that there actually could be power in having recommendations in your report that could like set the agenda for this other body. And so maybe there's opportunities for some of you to try to maneuver to maybe get on bodies that maybe are get created by the legislature to investigate this. And so in one scenario, your report might then be recommendations on reparations are maybe the start of the conversation there. So there is some power in setting that agenda. At the same time, like I fully appreciate that risk or thinking about this as being potential risk of putting off like an excuse. It's an excuse to actually take not to take action. Right? We need this other body to see its work through.
Yes, Councilor Franklin.
Yes. So I do know that this is one of the reparations legislation is one of the priorities of the Legislative Black Caucus. The specifics of what that bill looks like, I don't know. But what I wanted to add was I think it's worth having a conversation with the lead sponsor or sponsors around that bill. I think it's worth having a conversation because I think that they need to be aware of what's happening on this track that they may not be aware of. And so I don't know if the bill is looking at just studying reparations, or I don't know if it's looking at making specific requests. And so this is why it's worth looking at the bill, number one, and then B, finding out who those sponsors are for that bill, reaching out to that legislators, that policymaker's office, and schedule a meeting to have a sit down to talk about the importance of what's going on this track, how there is synergy or intersection between the two, depending on what's being asked in the bill. I don't think that they need to be at odds with each other. I think that they can be complementary. But I do think it's worth that conversation. And I don't mean just by phone. I mean actually going and having a seat and saying, hey, this is what we've been doing since 2019. And this is where we are now. We understand that this legislation, you're pushing forward says X, but we want to talk about how we can complement each other, how things can be included, so on and so forth. Because I definitely think that they are complementary.
Yeah, I just dropped the in the chat a link to the preliminary. Yeah, and again, it's got a whole lot of co-sponsors there. But I'm pretty sure it was Delegate Pena Melnick who might have introduced it. I'll certainly have a look at this, but they're talking about submitting a preliminary report by January 2027 and final report with recommendations by November 1 of 2027. So I think, whatever we do, we'll be working ahead of them, because again, I mean, we will have our final report in end of 2025, and we will hopefully have all the recommendations in and all of that stuff set up by June of 2026, so that by the time their preliminary report comes out, we'll be done, and whatever we've recommended will hopefully already be implemented.
It looks like Delegate McCaskill out of Baltimore County. She looks like she may be the lead sponsor. Is a number of sponsors, and some of them I know are part of the Legislative Black Caucus. But if I recall correctly, when the Legislative Black Caucus made their announcement about their priorities for this legislative session, she was the one that stood up and then spoke about reparations being one of the priorities. And I know that she is, I don't know what district the number district, but I know she's in Baltimore County on the east side, I believe, of Baltimore County.
And I do remember, now that you mention it, Nick, that Delegate Pena Melnick announced at the Prince George County hearing that this was going to be one of her priorities. So even if she's not taking a lead, given the strong relationship to her, if only you two can go back to Starbucks, have another conversation of exactly what Stephanie Franklin's highlighting, how to kind of complement each other.
Yeah, I definitely hope it can be complimentary. I hear what you're saying, Stephanie. I think it would be awesome if the second reparations review, and sorry, I took myself off video because I'm driving to pick up a kid. But if if it builds upon our recommendations, so if it looks like, we occupy the space as it relates to restorative justice reparations concerning lynching, and then they build upon that for, a broader reparations program, that's my ideal of how it would go. My concern, not to be a pessimist, but looking at it politically, I could see people thinking that we're only going to get one bite at this apple, and maybe feeling like, well, do we want to take our shot just on lynching, or do we try to go after the whole thing and likely end up getting nothing done? But just kind of thinking about the political way this may play out as opposed to the practical way that it could play out. So coordination early and often, like Stephanie recommended, I definitely think is the best approach, so that they do know what we're doing, and we can keep our lane clear to accomplish all the great things that we've set in motion.
Okay. Yeah, I can try reaching out either through Delegate Pena-Melnick's office or just try to get in touch with Delegate McCaskill and see if we can set up a time, to have them either join us at a Reconciliation Committee meeting or just have a group of us, whether it's, the folks on the commission, meeting with them. But yeah, I think we should definitely see if we can find a time to get together. Or do you want to just try to invite them to join us for the next meeting next month, or, try to have a special meeting with them?
I think probably outside of this larger setting would
Yeah.
probably be better, just to have more frank conversation. So
Okay,
yeah.
no, that sounds good. I will plan accordingly. The other thing I'm realizing is, oh, good Lord, next meeting next month is going to be the last meeting we have before the hearing. So, that just makes me a little nervous about, yeah, we got a whole lot to do between now and then, but, I think, yeah, we're probably going to next month have to kind of really focus on, getting ready for the 2 days of that hearing in April. Other thoughts, because again, I want to be mindful of time. Um, are there any other thoughts, ideas, comments, questions?
I was just gonna say, if there's anything that Living and Growing can do, thinking about this 2-day event. I mean, of course, we can be there as we always are for each session and be available to people as long as we're announced. But if there's anything additional, if there's going to be an area where people are sharing testimony, or whether it's writing or video, as Amy kind of said, she's in process of thinking about. If there's anything else we can do or offer, just let us know, because we will be there and available.
Thank you. I truly appreciate that. And again, just having you there for all of this, throughout the process has just been fantastic. And so, yeah, I would welcome any, certainly any insights you'd be willing to share with us, having been to every hearing. Okay.
I was just gonna lift up for Janice and Leah to be on the lookout for an invite for an additional just meeting with Nick and our co-chair, so that we're able to again go over all of the different timeline pieces and just answer any additional questions you all may be coming up to while you all are doing a lot of this preliminary research into the information we've provided. We know that it's a lot. So just be on the lookout for that meeting, not next week, but the week after.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, barring anybody who wants the last word, I think we can call it a meeting. And thank you all, number one, for taking the time. But again, thank you all for all of the work that you're doing to make all of this possible. It really does take a village, and, many hands make for light work. So thank you all. And again, I just want a special shout out to Hannah and to Kayla for the work on getting those invitations out. That was huge. So thank you. And have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time.
Thank
Yeah.
you.